Okay, folks, I think we're all here that we're expecting, so I'd like to call the Northwood Budget Work Session back to order with a roll call again, please. Tom? Here. Brad? Here. Tim? Here. Dan is excused for the afternoon. He had a previous family engagement. Mike Moore? Steve? Here. Betty? Here. Paul? Here. Ted? Here. Pam? Here. Jim? Here. Brian? Here. Bob? Here. Eric? Here. Mike Jobin? Here. And I am here, and we received a message from Betsy asking to be excused for the afternoon because of technical issues beyond her control and being able to connect with us. She will be observing via the live stream, but will not be in attendance. So that being done, okay, we're back to executive office. All right, let's just clarify the town administrator. The amount that the Board of Selectmen are requesting is $118,602. We had a couple of discussions, a couple of changes in amounts that did not pass. Are we now going forward at this point with the 118,602, or does someone wish to bring up something else? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody. So we will go down to executive office. And whomever has questions, concerns, my questions were answered, and I don't remember if I was the only one who had an issue with executive office or not. I'm guessing since I'm not seeing anything from anyone.
Can I clarify?
Please.
The procedure would be if one or more people have wish to change something within one of these categories, that we would entertain that by way of a motion and a second. And if it passes, we would then make that change at that time in that line item.
Correct.
And if it fails, we may entertain, as we did previously, a second motion and maybe a third and a fourth on that item. But once we finish with an item and there are no further motions to make changes in that line item, then we will then say, are there any other line items in which people want to make changes?
Well, I've got the list that we've gone through, so we'll go through those.
And then once we finish making changes, we then, in a sense, by default, accept the resulting line item.
That is my understanding.
And then do you think we need to vote on that resultant line item or bottom line for that section? Or is it, are we finished?
I don't know that we're going to get there today, so that's something that we'll probably be addressing Monday night. But yeah, we'll do a tentative vote.
Right, that would be not voting, having made the changes that we want to make, or not making the changes that we didn't want to make, would leave us with an item, as we have with the other sections, where we said, so that's going to be what we move forward with.
Right.
So we don't really need another final vote.
Correct.
unless Linda wants to suggest another procedure.
And by the way, Tom, thank you very much for having volunteered. You probably won't volunteer again, but we appreciate you. Yes, Paul.
I mean, I guess, I don't know if I'm okay with that or not, but like the previous, gotta put glasses on so I can read, on the town administrator. I mean, if you were to hold a vote, I would say no. So when are you gonna record a number against that when you say we're all done with the line items and we've passed or failed or whatever?
If we've had a motion, yes. Just as we did with the
So at the
departments
end of
that
the
we
day,
went through that nobody asked any questions about.
If I don't agree, you know, at the end of the day, we've had our votes on whatever we disagreed with on town administrator.
Right.
Now, at the end of the day, I still don't agree with the 118,600.
Mm-hmm.
I would then make a motion to vote on that, or how are you gonna handle that? Is this not gonna be a vote tally, or? I'm sorry? Motion to, well, then we just get into an endless circle of foolishness. But I guess my point is if you're not gonna put it, as long as it's not gonna say, you know, that the budget committee voted, you know, 18-0, because it didn't.
No, because, right. That's where the number will show up. So if at the end of it, Paul, if you still disagreed with that number, let's say it's still higher than what you want to see, then you would vote no. And on the total of the proposed, because it's what we're recommending to, each section is not going to have a specific vote. Tim?
I'll get even. So I guess, I don't know. I really am having a hard time with all of this.
As am I.
Don't see why we went through and unanimously approved the vast majority of these lines. I don't have a problem with that. And in doing that, I thought I kind of helped out the situation. Mm-hmm. I am extraordinarily uncomfortable that somebody out there would think that on that line I'm approving because it doesn't say that I don't. There's not a vote saying that I don't approve. That's my problem. You know, I want everybody in this town to know exactly where I sit, and I do not approve with that number. And I'm a little upset it's not going to show that somehow. No, I think we already did the vast majority of them, but there's about 8, 9 different ones that somebody has an issue with. Those, yes, I think we should have a straw vote.
And those we will,
We'll see.
depending upon what comes up. If nobody ends up bringing up anything.
Well, we brought it up.
No, I understand that. But as an example, we were just looking at executive office. I know I put it on the list because I had a couple of questions which got answered before we went to lunch. So, and nobody else brought up anything. Exactly. Exactly. So, because nobody else brought up any concerns, my assumption is that we are in agreement with that amount for executive office.
Yes.
Okay. That's all I'm saying. The- Okay. Linda?
The responsibility of the budget committee is to create a budget. So however you arrive at that, you need to have a budget that will go into the MS 737 form. For a number of years, you took votes on every single section in the town budget. And it was even recorded in the minutes with initials as to who voted for what. But it's still a majority of the committee that ultimately that decision ends up being the final number that goes to deliberative. So if you have agreed that you are accepting a similar number that the Board of Selectmen has, there's no reason you can't skip over it. The fact that some people didn't prevail doesn't mean that you, as a majority vote, did not approve that. And that's what's going to show. The only thing that's going to show anywhere as to who voted for what, other than if somebody wants to look at my voting sheets, is
mine.
the final number that you send off, and the 737, which would show any changes that you make to the budget that differ from the Board of Selectmen, if that's the basis by which you're working, are their numbers. And those would be put into the 737 side by side, and then you would have your budget.
So Tim, I'll come back to you. Is there a different change? Okay, I see where you're going. I think I know where you were coming from. Brad?
We took a vote, two votes on that section. I assume that's going to be recorded in the minutes. That there was a vote on that there was a motion and a vote will be in the minutes. So that
Yes.
those that voted for or against is going to be recorded for
Right.
the record.
Yes,
I mean,
Because
is that all we're talking about? I mean,
I've got them on my list here, and I'm sure Linda has.
it's a matter of record in the minutes that we made a motion and voted on something. Other than that, it's just bottom line. I mean, we're just wasting a lot of time.
True. Okay. So back to executive office. Is there anyone that would like to further discuss the selectmen's requested $70,339 for executive office? Okay, I'm not seeing anything, so that amount would remain. The next one I have is voter registration. And the reason that I had concerns with this one as well as elections is the notation that there are 3 elections in 2022, the town, the primary, and the state, and that they're using the same budget as was in 2018, which also had 3 elections. The difference is that the rate of pay for supervisors or clerks changed last year, and that I don't believe is accounted for in these numbers. The rate was increased per hour, and I don't believe that the amounts that are listed here would account for that difference in pay rate.
The rates for the supervisors of the checklist and the ballot clerks, the amounts that are in the department head column are using the current rates that they're being paid. Does that answer your question, Ginger?
Which is why it's higher than the 2018 total budget.
Well, I guess we'll see. If the department heads have computed the increased rate times the number of ballot clerks and supervisors, if it goes over, then I guess the selectmen will find the difference somewhere else in the budget. Pam?
Not sure if it's relevant, but under contracted services, between actual expenditure in 2018 versus what is budgeted, there's quite a difference there, and that could be that it's going to feed into that increase in pay scale, and that we're not using as much for contracted services. So that would be part of what they've allocated.
Well, again, that was my question. That was my concern. Betty, you had a question?
I'm looking at elections, and under clerks and counter salaries in 2018, the approved was 1,175. Actual expenses were higher, and the amount over here for 2022 is the same amount, 1,175.
At this point, if my feeling, then please jump in. If the department heads have submitted that and feel that they have come up with a correct figure, if in fact the ballot clerks and supervisors, whatever, are involved longer, then the overage will be found somewhere else in the budget.
Well, I'm a supervisor of the checklist, and I know I got a raise, so I'm really excited about that. But I don't, if I go back to 2018, what I see is that while $1,000 was budgeted for the two supervisors, but they only received $699, and the chief supervisor was budgeted for $750, but again, and that went a little bit over. So I think that the numbers that they brought forward, unless something is very different, are really sort of in the ballpark of what Judy Pease and me and our recently added supervisor of the checklist, who is Ginger Dole. So we have to recuse ourselves.
Agreed.
I think that's still pretty ballpark of what
Okay.
will end up needing. I, on the other hand, really am not sure what the contracted services are. Do any of you guys know what the contracted services are for this? I saw a hand.
I was going to suggest that you, as the chair and supervisor of the checklist, comment.
Oh, I'm not.
But he's not chair. Judy is.
Judy. Thank God. Any ideas, Sharon? Walter's saying that Judy Pease did confirm these numbers.
Okay.
And if there's anybody who ought to know. She ought to know.
My question's been answered.
Okay.
Does anyone else have any comments or whatever on voter registration, the requested amount of $2,385. Then I'm going to presume, since no one's speaking up, that that amount is acceptable. Okay. Elections was the next one in the amount of $4,765. Not seeing anything from anyone. Mr. Chase.
I just want to add one little wrinkle to this, and that is there are petitions being circulated in New Hampshire to do away with voting machines. There's a group of people who want votes to be counted by hand. And those of you who have participated in our elections the night of the election and watched the votes be counted, that would be astounding in terms of how much time and energy it would take to count votes by hand. So if any of you hear of such a petition going on in Northwood, let us know, because these numbers would quickly go out the window if we had to pay people to stay there into the wee small hours to count votes by hand.
Thank you, Tom. Any other comments or questions on elections? Okay. Next one I have a note on is assessing on page 3. And Tim, I believe you had some questions as soon as we get a mic to you. Right. What did I say? Didn't I say assessing? No, we're on assessing now. And Tim has a question.
Yes, thank you. So I'm not really sure how we managed to go actual 2018 42,000, 2019 54,000, 2020 78,000, 2021 well we're at actual in 2020 got 78. We're at 57. I don't know if there's more coming in or not. To the huge amount that we have now was 125, reduced to 105. So this is one area that I would say that I have put in a minus 30,000 out of whatever cross-country appraisal and statistical update for 84,400. I'm not sure. Somebody can explain to that, but that's one area that I think is. I mean, if maybe we need to look for a new company, I guess is what I would say. Thank you. And no, I'm not going to make any motions.
Explanation of that? I see a selectman ready to respond.
Well, so obviously we're required to maintain values in the town under certain rules and regulations and laws in the state of New Hampshire. Cross-country appraisal is our contracted appraising company that manages our values for us, which is the standard annual contract of $54,400. This handles all the day-to-day assessing functions that are required for us to do. Last in 2020, there was a revaluation, as most of you know, which is was a significant increase in the budget and cost because it's a whole different extra function that has to be done, a whole different calculation of properties and a process that has to be approved by the state. One of the things that we have already determined, looking at the statistics for 2021, is that there are a number of our properties that are already out of line or compliance with market value. We're required to stay roughly within 10% of 100% with our property values from year to year. And we're already seeing a certain segments of our property value markets, falling out of that 90% range and actually falling down below 70% in some cases due to the market conditions as values are continuing to rise. So it was, I think, a prudent discussion and recommendation from the select board to do a statistical update in 2022 that again would adjust values back in compliance where needed, so that we don't run into a situation as we did in 2020 when we were adjusting market values that were 5 years old and had a significant impact on people's lives, as we know, in terms of the property tax increase because of the value changes. So it's why we're proposing this this option, and I think it's prudent in order to maintain the values and to be, compliant with the requirements of the Department of Revenue.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo what Walter said. And I think back to what comments I get from the public and the disruption caused by waiting so long on the revaluation until 2020 was probably the most commented thing I got. And I at least personally committed to advocating for doing the updates much more frequently, staying in sync with what the market is so we don't have these disruptions. So I just want to say I'm 100% behind this additional $30,000.
If I can just add, from my experience, since I've lived in the same house for 42 years, and so I have no idea what it's worth. So I remember back in 2008 during the housing bubble, I got a assessment that said my house was worth $750,000, which was a little surprising, having paid $58,000 for my house, to find it valued at $775,000. But I think that's one of the reasons why it's prudent to stay on top of this, because unless we do valuations that keep pace with the market and keep people apprised of what their houses are worth, then it's always going to be a shock to them to see that the same place that they're living in yesterday is going to be worth 10%, 15%, 20% more tomorrow. So I bite the bullet, and that's my thoughts.
And I'm going to toss in here a quick question myself. I understand the cross-country appraisal, the monthly fee for the contract that we have. Am I naive in believing that that would cover any new construction that needs to be assessed? And if that's the bulk of what that contract would cover, wouldn't there be time under that contract to do these statistical updates without having to have an additional amount to do that? That's sort of question one. Question two is, initially 50,000 was requested and the selectmen reduced it to 30. So I'm curious as to why 50 down to 30, and can't the statistical updates, which I understand need to be done, can't that be incorporated in with the time that we're already paying for in the monthly support, if the monthly support is primarily for new construction?
So the short answer is, it's kind of like, you hire somebody to paint your house and you ask them to paint the garage and don't charge you anymore. So they're two separate functions. Our normal assessing functions is what's covered under our standard contract, which is in the $54,000 amount. The extra 30,000 is to do a whole different set of functions in terms of preparing a market assessment and update of values, which is really not related just only to new construction. New construction is something we do all the time, but this is really going out and doing a whole market update. To answer your question about the difference in the 50 versus the 30, 50 was the original quote, and after I sat down with the assessing company and told them that that wasn't, feasible, we negotiated the contract down to 30,000. It puts a little more responsibility on staff in terms of some of the functions, like arranging for taxpayer hearings and things like that. We will do versus them doing it. So we were able to knock some of the about $20,000 off that price.
Is this an annual contract, Walter? That's something that's renegotiated each year, or is this a long-term contract?
So the select board entered a contract in 2020, a 5-year contract. So we'll be in the second year in 2022.
Thank you. The 54. Are there other questions? Oh, I'm sorry, Paul?
So this is not a physical appraisal, this is some sort of mathematical algorithm that's going to be applied to all the property in the town and then magically produce a new assessment on the property?
So basically, yes, it is what we call a statistical update. As you may be aware, every year a portion of the town is looked at in order to update and redocument the physical data of each individual property in town. That's because that's required that it be done every 5 years. So rather than doing it all at once, it's done over a 4-year period, basically, and that's included in the 54,000. But for the most part, this is not just statistical, but it's also verifying sales data and that type of thing that's required in order to support the numbers that they come up with in the outcome of the reassessment.
Are there other questions? Comments? Okay, I'm seeing none. So we are going to go with, since I'm not hearing objections, with the 105,553 for assessor. Okay, the next one I have is Personnel Administration. Personnel Administration, which is on page 5. Tim.
Am I on? Yep. So this will also come up later in both the police and somewhere else. I completely disagree in the environment that we live in today right now with the cost of living going up tremendously for all the people in town and across our country. Gas, I could go on and on. It's go grocery shopping if you want to see how tough it is. So I disagree with the 2 new positions proposed in town. One is at the police department. I think the other is at the library. For many reasons, I think that too many people don't understand and forget about the fact that there are a lot of extra costs to full-time employees versus part-time employees. And it shows up here. So I've reduced in my budget that I will bring up at the end of this whole thing, 38,000 for 2 positions on insurance. I obtained that number by dividing the 327 by 19, I think it is, or 17, and came up with the 19,000. Apparently that's the number they put in for it. And also the 2,000, I don't even remember, but a total there of 40,000. What? Did you say something, Paul? Oh, dental, yes, that's right, for those 2 positions. So in personal administration, my budget would be, that I would want, would be $40,000 less. Thanks.
And you got there by eliminating a position. 2 positions. We haven't gotten to them yet, have we?
No. So I have a quick question for either Walter or Cheryl, because I'm assuming that they'll know. The indication here is that the rates for health insurance increased by 6.2, dental decreased by 1.5%. Are those confirmed or are those estimates?
Those are confirmed. We have those rates are effective July 1st, but they've been confirmed.
The other question I had was short-term and long-term disability. Is that something new? Only because I'm not seeing a line for it in the past.
No, we've had that.
Do we know where those were previously?
In the prior years, it was under line 240, employee disability.
I see it now, thank you. Yep, I see it. Any other discussion on Betty?
Well, I'm not sure about the police position. However, the library position was done so that we can staff better. And the other thing too is expenses are going up for these people as well. And I think that's something that should be thought about.
Tim?
Thank you. I'd like to clarify something so that you know my exact position, and that is I may or may not agree with an extra police officer. I may or may not agree with a full-time library additional person, even though that is combining 2, there's the extra expense that is my concern. My real attitude on this issue is, and we had this in this town for an awful long time, is that any full-time positions were a warrant article and voted on by the people. And that's what I think is the correct way to handle these things, including you. I've been through a lot of town reports lately, and I can think of at least 3 or 4 times when the police wanted a full-time person or whatever. And if you think back, you'll remember that that's how it was done for many years. And I absolutely feel that the town should have a say in these things. I don't like them buried in budgets. Thank you.
Any other comments, discussion? Pam?
Am I on? I'm not saying I agree or disagree with my worthy co-board member, but this is coming into 2022. It's the 21st century. Chief has been in and told us about the need for public safety to have an officer. We have heard from the library and their need to have the full staffing. And the library certainly does provide an important service to this community, a vital service that makes people want to come here, makes us capable of growing into the future. You can't simply say we want growth for a tax rate, for tax purposes, but positive growth, young families, others that come here to retire, these are important things. And I'm not saying that we should go back to the past and go back through all the town reports and look at how it was used to be done. We've learned a lot over COVID, and we have to adjust to how it is happening and how we are changing.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, so at this point, we are remaining at 489,018. Okay, next department that I have on my list that we were going to go back to was the police department. Which begins on page 7. Mr. Tudor. Paul has a... Tom's getting tired.
Yeah, I have two issues with the police department. One is the full-time ad. For the chief to sit behind me and tell me he's going to add a full-time officer because he has someone out on military service who's going to be back halfway through the year or another 6 months. I mean, there's no reason to put an employee on the ranks, pay all of the extra benefits, retirement, medical, when that employee is coming back 6 months from now. I think this town has more than enough police officers. It has, if it needs additional help, it can hire some part-time officers to that you don't have to pay all the benefits to, and bring them along maybe as full-time if someone leaves the force. The second thing is the cruisers. I mean, we bought 2 cruisers 2 years ago. We bought another cruiser this year. How many cruisers do we need? If we have one every year. I did ask Walter to update my cruiser thing from last year, but I didn't hear back, and I honestly didn't give him a lot of time to do that, so he probably didn't have time to get that done. But there's no reason why we have to buy a cruiser every year, and there's no reason why we can't eliminate it from the budget this year, save a little money. Like I said, we bought 2 last year and one the following year. So I am making a motion to eliminate the police full-time position and the cruiser from the budget.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion. Tim?
I'd also like you to notice, while you're thinking about this one, that, as I understand it, Officer Wells is going to be out for half the year. Yet, his entire salary and all of the assorted benefits, I don't know how many he's getting while he's out, all of the assorted Social Securities, retirements, and everything else that we pay for him, and I don't mind doing that when he's here, but it's still all included in the budget. And that is a substantial amount of money. Yet he's not here, and I assume not being paid. But maybe I'm wrong, maybe he is. So, I mean, it's just the entire wage for him, I think it's 68,000 something. is in the budget. Kind of hard for me to understand if he's not here. So I'm kind of surprised at that. Thank you.
Can one of the selectmen or Walter address that issue?
Just from memory from the presentation from the chief to the Board of Selectmen, and unfortunately this question didn't come up when the chief was here, so he can answer himself, but there's no specific date by which we know that Officer Wells will be coming back. They were only given him an estimate. He could be gone longer, or he could come back after the first of the year. So that was the reason why, on the, just to be prudent, to make sure that we had the funding if he did come back in January or February, that we did have the money in the budget in order to cover his cost.
Other comments? Mr. Moore?
I'm gonna bring you back. When I got on the budget committee 6 years ago, we were buying all our police cruisers the same year. And so a lot of us who came on then said, that doesn't make any sense. We need to spread them out. So we're buying one a year instead of 5 every 5 years. So that's the reason we did that. I know we got 2 because in one of the previous years they didn't do it because of budget problems and stuff. But I mean, that's the reason we set it up that way. And it was the budget committee that decided to do it that way and not to buy them all, the same year. So that's kind of, so I guess what I'm saying is, if you're going to put those 2 together, I'm going to vote against it. But if you want to split them up, then we'll see. I mean, first off, up until probably, I'll say 4 or 5 years ago, we ran the town on 2 sedans for a decade. Okay? We only had 2 cruisers here. All right? And then maybe they both went bad and you had to replace them both in 1 year. But as I remember from talking with the chairwoman, is the reason that she told me we put it in the operating budget is because they were in warrant articles and nobody would pass the warrant article. But in any event, this is a small town. It's 7 square miles. I mean, 7 miles across. We've got, what, 5 or 6 cruisers now? One sits at Co-Brown full-time doing nothing most of the time. There's no reason to add a cruiser here every year. We should look at the fleet, look at the mileage, which is what I was attempting to do with Walter, and then make an assessment every year whether we need to replace a cruiser. Maybe we need to replace one every other year, or every 3rd year. Or maybe there's times we need to do it every year. But, I mean, not when we just bought 3 new ones, I don't think. Anyway, that's my opinion. And I'll separate the motions. That's fine. You want me to make my motions?
No,
Madam
I'd
Chair?
like to make a comment first, please. So, we've had more than 2 cruisers further back than what you were indicating. And yes, the Budget Committee did make the recommendation a number of years ago to follow in the footsteps of Deerfield and Nottingham in placing a cruiser in the operating budget versus the warrant article. I do take issue with having bought 3 cruisers in the last 2 years, because although the town approved the purchases, they haven't arrived. They have not arrived. Walter, can you give us an update, please, on the vehicles? The last I spoke with the chief, he was hoping that one would be here by the end of the year, but the truck was not. I would love an update.
Yeah, that's my understanding. The last discussion I had with the chief was that we still had one we didn't order until late summer. Again, just being cautious of the budget and so forth. The other one, the pickup truck, has been on order for over a year and was tied up in the whole chip issue and so forth. So we probably won't get the SUV probably until after the first of the year, but we're hoping we may get the pickup sooner than that.
So in other words, the two that were approved last year, well, June, we have not received as yet.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
My point is that the vehicles that they are intended to replace are getting used that much more, as are the newer vehicles. Two that we've already approved and have provided funding for. One that is being requested. The vehicles that we have are getting older. The last new vehicle that we've actually taken possession of was 2 years ago because of ordering issues. We haven't gotten them in. Can't drive them if you don't have them. My concern in deleting the vehicle is going to put us back behind again. Yes, it's 7 miles from one end of town to the other, but we've got the Gulf, we've got the Narrows, we've got East Town. We're spread out on a lot of back roads, and there are issues that require officers to be on the road quite a bit. I am opposed, personally, to deleting the funding for another cruiser. As to the vacant position, that has been vacant for a while and has been needed. And in the past was, we tried filling in with part-timers. Police department is hitting a crunch the same way other departments, both in the state as well as this town. Without benefits, a lot of people won't do the job. I personally think that it needs to stay in. And yes, Jim, I understand you want to make a different point.
It's always interesting to see how what one person will say is not approved and another say is. The only reason the police vehicles are quote unquote approved is that there was a police vehicle in the 2018 default budget. Consequently, the default budget was voted in 2019, so there's a police vehicle there. 2020, so there's a police vehicle there. 2021, so there's a police vehicle there. But yet the same people that would say that is say, well, yeah, but in the default budget, there's only $1 over here, but we needed $10, so it wasn't voted in, even though $1 was voted in. They don't want to admit that. As far as the police vehicle, somebody said, I'm sorry, I forgot who, that warrant articles were never approved on police vehicles. That couldn't be further from the truth. There was a time or two when they weren't. And there were many times when they were. And I only brought one town report, but I could go through town reports and show you time and again when police vehicles were in fact approved by this town. When the police chief would come in and make the case and was believed, then they were approved. To do what's happening here, in my opinion, and it's so wrong, is that, and I believe somebody else said that just in the last few minutes. So the cruisers were always not passed on warrant articles, so now we're sinking them into the budget. And yes, the budget committee absolutely made that decision. Okay, so, and I would call that burying it into the budget. Same thing with personnel. For many, many years, whether it was the clerk, whether it was the finance, and I could just go on and on, we always had the opportunity to say yes or no to a full-time position, not a person, but a position. And now that's again being taken away from us in the budgeting process. And that is what bothers me so much. It's not that I feel I should make the decision as to whether we have another police department personnel. And to me, it's ridiculous. I mean, if you just, we don't need 9, 10 police people in this town. And Ginger said that it was filling a vacancy. They just hired 2 people. What we're talking about is the new hire on the line. Says new hire if you look. We're not talking about filling vacancies. We understand the police department needs to fill vacancies. And they've done that. We, as far as somebody could correct me, but I think we have no vacancies today. They filled it. I was told they filled 2 just in the last week or 10 days. So again, over and over and over, I'm sorry, I'm going to keep repeating it. My complaint is that we collectively are taking away the rights of the citizens of the town to make individual decisions. We're burying them in the budget. And the consequence of that is, so far 3 years running, and I believe if you keep it up, it'll be 4 default budgets. And I'm sorry to see that.
Walter, Tim brings up a point that I'm hoping you can clarify. He indicated that the town has hired 2 new officers recently, is that correct?
Yes.
Are they listed on this list?
Yes.
They're already listed there. So at this point, we have the chief, a sergeant, a corporal, and 2 officers, is that correct? I'm excluding Lieutenant Wells because at the moment he's on military duty. So all of these positions with dollar amounts next to them have people attached to them already. So since they have been hired, they have to be accounted for in the operating budget. So these aren't positions that come April, you're going to be looking for someone to fill, assuming that that went through. They've already been hired. Thank you. If they've already been hired, we have to pay the salaries. I don't see how we can eliminate a position if someone is already filling that position. That's why I just clarified it. I wanted to clarify it as well. I think it would have been clearer if we could have had the names of the individuals filling those 2 spots, as opposed to vacant position and new hire. However, we've just been told that those positions have already been filled. Therefore, I feel we've got to include their salaries.
Can I ask Walter to provide the names of the 2 people that should be written in to this budget for the vacant position and the new hire? Can you give us those names? I can. Cheryl, go for it, Cheryl.
I'm not sure which is which, but Rondo and Furbush are their names. Rondo is Rondeau, and Furbush is Furbush.
And the salary on both lines is the same, so it really doesn't matter which one goes where.
Correct.
Thank you. Okay, so it was a combination.
Can you say that again and get your second to withdraw? is,
I said, based on that, I'll withdraw my motion for to remove the officer, and that this is very deceiving.
Sure. Not only is it deceiving, so as I understand it now, you're telling me that we have another police officer that wasn't in the budget that was hired without town approval, is what you're telling me. I mean, that brings up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11? No, 9, 10 police officers in this small town. Wow. Well, you got Chief, Wells, Zobel, Gillen, Downs, Stagg, Rondo, Froversh, Sullivan, and Dryketts. Please excuse any of you that I got your name wrong.
And I believe that at least a couple of them are part-time versus full-time. So, just so that we're official here, I had Paul making the motion, Tim seconding the motion to remove the cruiser and the full-time person. You withdrew your motion. If you're thinking about to make it clean, if you can remove the second and the motion, and if you want to make another motion for part of it, then make that a clean motion. You removed your original? Tim, do you remove your second?
Again, I'll move to remove the cruiser from the operating budget.
So that's your new motion. Okay, we have a motion and a second now to delete the cruiser from the proposed operating budget. Do we have discussion? Okay, I don't see anything. Tom, go ahead.
I'm just thinking to previous meetings of the Budget Committee back in the good old days when we were gathered in the town hall, and on some of those occasions, the police chief presented us with data about the number of calls that he and the department were handling, and a number of other indices that showed, even though my house hasn't been burglarized, other people have experienced that. The number of calls that have been precipitated by opioid overdoses, the number of times when they've got to respond along with the fire department to whatever's going on. Bob, you know better than I, when it's a full court press to respond to things going on in town. And I'm feeling a little bit missing that data about the demand for police services, the demand for fire services. So it would be helpful to me, if that's how other people are feeling, that we table these motions until maybe we can get the police chief back, unless our select board representatives know in some detail how busy are there? What is the mileage on the cruiser? What is the actual need? And in the absence of that, you know, I'm not an informed voter on this motion.
Are there other comments? Yeah.
I just would like to take exception to the statement that the cruiser at Co Brown is doing nothing. current status of resource officers and the safety of our children in the schools is a priority in this town, and to have the cruiser there, able to respond to an emergency or able to react to an emergency with the gear that it has inside of it, is a service, even if it is just sitting there. So I'd just like to take exception to that and say that it is a viable vehicle in service.
What would you say if you want to take a town asset and waste it up at the Co-Brown? And I'm saying it's being wasted, or the resource officer is being wasted because you want equipment in it. Take the oldest vehicle in the fleet and stick it up there.
That's what's there.
That's true.
Is the oldest vehicle. Looks can be deceiving.
Get out of
Is there other discussion? Any other questions? Bob?
When Patty has the vehicle, it is at the school for that period of time, but when it is back at the police station, it is used by other officers. So in fact, Officer Zobel, Sergeant Zobel tends to use that cruiser on the weekends.
Linda?
Yeah, if I could just add that Co-Brown does reimburse the town of Northwood under contract for the cruiser being there. And also the question about the statistics, the chief does give the calls for service, accidents, arrests every month, and that is in their minutes, which are posted once the minutes are approved on the website.
Thank you. The motion at this time is to remove the $47,500 for the vehicle purchase from the police department's proposed budget. Do we have any further comments? Okay, seeing none. Tom? Brad? Tim? Mike Moore? Steve? Betty? Paul? Ted? Pam? Jim? Brian? Bob? Eric? Mike Jobin? And I am a no. So our vote is 2, 3, 3 yes. And 11 no. There were a lot of no's. 1, 2, 3. Correct. I missed one. So it's 4 yes, 11 no. So the motion does not prevail. Is there any further discussion on the proposed police operating budget of $916,287? Tom, did you have something?
The chief happened to be on tree removal detail in front of my house this past week, and I chatted with him briefly about Officer Wells' deployment to Kosovo, right? And I suggested to him that upon his return that we figure out some way to welcome him back and thank him for his service. So if any of you feel the same way, you might want to mention that to the chief.
Okay, I'm not seeing any further discussion regarding the police department operating budget, so we'll move on to fire department. And that total on page 10 is $645,882. Tim?
Thank you. I could spend all day with all of my exceptions to this, but it really comes down to the amount of money in the budget compared to what we're spending on the fire chief. Because I'm not privy to all of the particulars, insurance and some stuff like that, I really can't come up with an exact figure, but it's quite a few thousand north of $100,000 when you add in insurances and retirements and Social Security and blah, blah, blah. When in fact we only have $10,000 for a police chief in the budget. I did look around. Our surrounding towns, Deerfield, for instance, is $12,000. I forget the others. I've got the stuff here in my bunch. But we went away from a mostly volunteer department that was staffed by mostly Northwood people. We now have far more full-time, including the fire chief, who makes a ton of money. I can't see any improvement. I don't understand why we did it, why we're spending the money, and take exception to it. Thank you.
Are there other comments, questions?
The select board has a comment?
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. The chief is here. If he'd like to address that, I'll make a comment. Is that appropriate? Madam Chair?
If the chief would like to address.
As he comes, I'd like to share, because I've heard those comments about how we used to be and what we used to do. Again, we're not in a used to mode anymore. I've gotten to know the chief pretty well. I am the chaplain of Northwood Fire Department. Gone out on 2 calls. To think that, I mean, we had a fatal Friday after Thanksgiving at Mobile. And that was the first one of those I showed up to. And just to see how the department ran, to see the chief organizing it and going all around, supervising it, to be part there and actually doing stuff, I cannot see cutting anything from the fire department or actually the police department, knowing, although I did just vote against the cruiser, I don't know if we actually need one of those, but for personnel and to pay the personnel, they run into every the same issues that we hear every other department runs into. Why can't we get part-timers? Let me ask you, you going to work part-time in that job? Or are you going to be on call in that job, like you said, for $10 an hour, when you can go sling coffee across the street and make more? No, it's a job that you're somewhat called to. They do, I believe, it more out of dedication than the financial reimbursement they get. And when I was there, helping that Friday night, looking at that young man who didn't make it, I was thinking, if that was me, my wife, or someone I knew, I would be grateful for everything we had in this town trying to get that young man out in the fashion they did, and in the timely fashion they tried. So to me, when I talked earlier about what are we doing and why are we doing it, I've kind of prioritized the budget in my mind. And I don't like using the word essential, non-essential, because we're all essential. But to understand that police and fire, to me, are at the top of the list, because when you need them, they're there. And God forbid you never need them. And just another comment about the police, when Dan's not here, but when his house was on fire, I walked up there because it's pretty close to mine, and I talked to one of the officers that was in the road. He actually kind of stopped me, and we got to chat for a good long time. He had already worked a 12-hour shift, had gone home, been there 3 hours, and get called back in, and was going to be there most of the night to keep the traffic from going up the road. So to say we're a small town and we don't need it, I guess we could. We're a main intersection between Concord and Portsmouth. There's a ton of traffic, a whole lot more than when I moved in 20 years ago. And we still respond to everything on Route 4. So, yeah, these guys, I just say they don't make what they're worth at all. And to nickel and dime someone's salary or someone's equipment, you know what, when you needed the equipment, I saw 2 jaws of life working at the same time and a spreader, I believe it's called, to get the dashboard off the kid. I'm glad they had the equipment, and that the people there knew how to run the equipment. Because to me, when you're dealing with life and death issues, that's top, because they're life and death issues. You know, I got other issues with other things in here that I don't believe are life and death, but when you're talking about life and death, and seconds can count, it just bothers me a little bit to want to nickel and dime certain issues like that. So, Chief, if you want to respond, I'm done.
So I guess I'd like to explain where the fire chief's salary comes from, because we have not allocated $10,000.
Is that on?
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, so the fire chief's salary is not $10,000. When I was hired here, they took one full-time position and combined that with the $10,000 allocated for the fire chief, and they also had $10,000 for stipends, and they put that into the fire chief. So as of today, I believe that as a fire chief, I make about $16,000 to $17,000 more than all of that put together. I'm not sure why the battle cry seems to be the fire chief is making over $100,000, because that's a misrepresentation. And we don't talk about the police chief that way. We don't talk about the public works director that way. We don't talk about the fire chief that way. So I make a little north of $70,000, and I think that's a fair salary. In my time here, we brought most of that money back to the town in the form of grants. I'm a pretty successful grant writer, and we brought in thousands of dollars in grants, so without the fire chief, you wouldn't be getting those grants. The other thing is, as a fire chief, I ride the ambulance every single day. So I'm not only the fire chief, I'm also on the floor working as a firefighter, as an EMT. one of the battle cries is the chief doesn't fight fire. Well, that's not really true either. As the fire chief, if I need to go in the burning building and fight the fire, I will do that. I'm capable of doing that. But that's really not my job. My job is being outside, coordinating the operation, making sure everyone is accounted for in the building, running the scene, calling for resources. So again, the chief doesn't fight fire, that's not accurate either. I'm sorry that I'm getting a little heated, but you know, this has been going on for 3 years now, and the misrepresentation about my position is becoming destructive. So, any questions?
Does anyone else have anything? Stephen first? Hang on, we'll get your mic.
Steve Robinson. You know me, Chief. You've been to my house recently, back in July, when my wife passed out for low blood pressure. And I live on the back side of the town off Gulf Road, which is pretty far away. I think as far as budget-wise on the police department ambulance services, we should do everything we can to sustain these people, because it's a pretty scary situation when you get a loved one at your feet, not there, you know. So I respect what you do. I appreciate what you do, and I think the budget is justifiable in every means. It saves one life, it's worth millions. And I said, my wife's blood pressure was 70/30, not good, not good. And you were there, you witnessed it, pretty scary. So I'm all for his budget, and I appreciate what you do. Thank you, sir.
Bob?
I think one of the things I would like the chief to comment about is kind of the old-time, all-time volunteers. At this point in time, how many actual, we'll call them townies, because that's what we've always done, are still on the force? I mean, and as I go through, I've got one, you know, maybe one hand and maybe some more. And because nobody is able to do this job anymore because they're working and so forth. So we don't have the volunteers that we used to. That's going all the way across the board. So I'd just be curious about that.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. We do have quite a few people that still live in town that are on the fire department. The concept of volunteers is gone in New England. We haven't had volunteers for decades on the fire department. So let's move on from that. If you talk to Steve Bailey, it's been a lot of decades since we had volunteer fire department. We do have a call fire department, and the call fire department is still the backbone of the Northwood Fire Department. We have people that live in town, people that live slightly out of town, and then we have part-time people that live way out of town. They can come back, but it takes them a little while. But they predominantly cover shifts. I did put out a thing on Facebook. I don't know if anybody saw it. If you want to help your community, please volunteer to be a firefighter. Nobody responded. So, and it's not just Northwood, it's a nationwide problem. People aren't stepping up to the plate to be call and volunteer firefighters like they used to. So the call fire department is always going to be the backbone of the Northwood Fire Department, but it's difficult to recruit people. It's difficult to recruit in-town people. So if anyone was interested in being a firefighter, I'd be happy to give you an application. But it's not a Northwood problem, it's a nationwide problem.
Thank you, Chief. Other comments? Mr. Kreider?
Yeah, there's one other thing that I'd like the Budget Committee to take into consideration, and that is that from the time when the chief joined the department until now, ambulance revenues on an annual basis have gone up well in excess of what the chief's salary is. He's done that by building up the department with well-qualified people. He's improved the services. And what was it, Chief? We're at $168,000 this year already? 143. We're on target for quite a bit more. And like I say, when we started, we were down in the $70,000, $80,000 a year range. So I think that's, you know, when you ask what's one of the benefits, it's not just, some of the, well, not just, but, I mean, it's not the services themselves, but it's also the fact that he's improved our income. And I'd just like you to take that into consideration too.
Any further discussion or comments? Okay, seeing none, does that mean that we are agreeable at this point with the $645,882 requested for the fire department? Okay, and we have our, I keep wanting to say road agent, our highway person here, and that's the next department I have on my list. And I think we can get through that before we have to wind down for today. It's a little after 3 now. Oh, I gotta find my warrant again. I think the only thing on the warrant was the communications equipment purchase, but that is coming from the unassigned fund balance, therefore no tax impact. This is the last year of that, correct, Mark? Okay. So this finalizes replacing all of the radios and communication equipment that's needed for the firefighters. And I think, other than the ambulance and the fire truck lease payments, that was it for the fire department. I don't think there was another warrant article. Well, the oh yeah, I forgot about the paving. Okay, because the chief is here, we'll skip quickly to the warrant article for the Narrows Fire Station pavement replacement. Do we have further questions or comments? This is an opportunity to get information. It's not that we're necessarily going to do a vote on this at the moment, but while we have the chief here, if there are any further questions or what have you. I'm sorry? We did go through it earlier. I'm just making sure.
Just to talk a little bit more about the Narrows Station in general, I know we have problems with the Ridge Station and a lot of operations have moved down there. Are we in good enough shape on the Narrows, or is there something we need to start thinking about as far as repairs or public safety complex?
Yes, go ahead, Mark.
So I'm hopeful that the Board of Selectmen reconvene the facilities, Safety Facilities Committee. I believe there are some things we can do with the Narrows Fire Station. We are taking off a few bites. We recently got a grant for a diesel extraction system that would have been a warrant article this year. So that's grant funded. We'll probably put in another grant this year and maybe upgrade the fire alarm system. And as moving forward, I think that's the better of the two facilities. If we're going to invest money in anything, let's invest it there. But right now, I think between the diesel exhaust and the pavement, and perhaps maybe a fire alarm system if we get the grant, that's probably about all we're going to be able to do this year, logistically anyway.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments while we have the chief here? Okay. Seeing none, that's all the fire-related warrant articles. So let's go to highway, which begins on page 11. Pam? I did. I was asking, and I thought we got it clarified on the electricity, the recycling building versus the highway building, and I was informed that the highway building was the salt shed for electricity. And somebody else asked about my other question, which was actually in a different section of the highway. So, highway administration, the amount requested is $220,354. Do we have any further questions or comments regarding that amount? Okay, seeing none. I'm not sure if we included all of this when I wrote down highway, so the paving and reconstruction, $147,409. See anything? Highway cleaning and maintenance.
I have a question about culverts, and while Chris is here, are there plans to do anything on the road that's closed next to your house with that culvert? Yeah, High Street's the...
Are you talking as far as High Street?
Yeah.
So as of High Street right now, there's no plans in the works. I am going to be starting to work on a federal grant, just like the Bull Lake Bridge. It's a 60-40 match. So that's coming here in the future. Thank you.
Tim? I don't know, he's been shutting it off every time.
I just want to say one thing. I've been very quiet, and I'm not going to say much about it as far as this mini excavator rental. Eventually, I will have a tremendous amount to say about it. Some of you know, a few of you know, the rest of you can know, that I have a court case with the town right now on this issue.
I think Tim, I'm
So
sorry.
I'm just going to mention,
interrupt.
you know, that I'm against this, and I'm waiting for the outcome of that before I'll say much about this mini excavator rental, but it's a big issue with me, and I'll leave it at that.
I do have a quick question for the selectmen. I see that the mini excavator rental and the chipper rental are listed under the department head's requested budget, but not included. Oh no, I take that back. Never mind. I just answered my own question. You gave me space to write why. That's my issue. Okay. Other discussion, questions regarding highway cleaning and maintenance? No, snow and ice is the next section. So we're looking at $51,500 for highway cleaning and maintenance. Okay, not seeing any discussion. Snow and ice control, we're looking at $99,002. Do we have any further questions or discussion? Michael? That's all right, he can. I know. He's moving faster.
Okay, that's better. All right, it's just another large discrepancy between the department head and the Board of Selectmen, so I was just wondering what the 30,000...
Yeah, it's a combination of 25,000 in contracted services and 5,000 for sand.
So, Chris being, full-time is really focused on utilizing our in-house staff for snow removal and ice control, and that includes, himself, one other full-time person, and then two part-time on-call personnel. So, because of his awareness and consciousness of the budget and so forth, he's been managing that quite well. And so the need for contracted services has dwindled. And as you can see, if you look at the actuals over the year to date, even though we're not quite out of the woods for 2021 yet, but we've only got 3 weeks left, and next week doesn't look too bad. Then we feel comfortable that we'll be able to get through the rest of this year under $50,000. In 2020, we spent $44,000, and then again going back to 2019, there was a different mindset and methodology for bringing in outside contractors. So as we talked about this more originally, and I think Chris understood exactly what direction we wanted to go in and so forth. We decided that we would make a $25,000 adjustment there when the board went through and did their slicing and dicing, as we call it. And then what was the other? Was there another line you had a question on? Yeah, sand. Chris can talk to the sand issue better than I can.
Hi, Chris Brown, Public Works Foreman. So actually our sand, we actually go out through a different provider now. We used to use Benevetto's, and we bought it by the ton. The new contractor we have actually sells it by the yard, so you actually get more product for the same price. So that's what So that's where the the $5,000 decrease in that is, because we're actually buying the same amount of product, but we're getting more of it for the same price.
Is it also the case, Chris, that you've built a little place for locals to get sand from the transfer station?
So that one was actually just a little project I took on myself. I saved all the timber that was falling through the year and had it milled out by a friend of mine. And it was just something I built for the community to, utilize. It was nothing, there was very minimal town expenditures on it, things like that, but it's just a little side project that I had. So. No, I don't want my name on it.
Okay. Other comments, questions, discussion?
The other, Walter was talking about the other one about utilizing townspeople as well. As using just the highway patrol truck and my trucks and stuff for covering a lot of the snowstorms. The other thing that's a great factor is all of my contractors are actually running smaller trucks. They're running F-350s, 450s. And if you look at our pay scale, it changes a lot. A lot of the six-wheelers used to pay excess of $95 an hour, where we're only paying $75 an hour for the smaller trucks. So we're still providing the service to the town, just utilizing smaller vehicles at a cheaper rate. That's also.
Any other questions or comments? Thought I'd just point out that the selectmen's requested in that line is about $68,000 less than the default budget. So just pointing that out. Okay, while we have Chris here, let's see if we can get through. No, I take that back. We were all set with sanitation and solid waste. Right. So I guess we're good there. No, not break time. Almost time to leave, but we still have a few things to do. Okay, going to animal control, which is on page 14. Someone had a question about this, but I don't recall who. Tim?
Thank you. This is one of the areas, I reduced this by 3,000. I mean, if you look at the 2018, 6,000, 2019, 6,400, 7,000 was the most. So far, we've only spent 4,000 here. This is just one area. The select board could have reduced that down by 3,000, save some money for the taxpayers. They didn't. I'll try.
Other comments, questions? Okay, so it appears that we are in tentative agreement on $10,573 for animal control. Okay, going on to, excuse me, community support agencies. We were informed of an addition for Ready Rides. So that new bottom line would be 29,096, if I did my addition correctly. Any questions, comments, discussion?
Am I correct in thinking that Ready Rides for next year came in late, and that's why it wasn't included in the package of materials that we got? Are you in a position maybe to bring whatever similar justification materials they provided to one of our meetings? Thanks.
Anything additional? Okay, next one I have is Parks and Recreation. Perhaps we can get into that. And then we have some internal business that we have to take care of. So who has questions on Parks and Recreation? Tim?
Thank you. I'm curious why the rec department director has gone from $23 and I think 61 cents up to $28, which is a pretty healthy increase. I think it's French Maid in the Tutu and Powerball ticket.
Nothing else? I think that happened before my time, so maybe they will know better.
So as you may recall, last year there was a proposal in the budget to hire a full-time recreation director, and then of course as a result of the vote where we ended up in a default, we decided to take a step back and look for a part-time recreation director. We were fortunate enough to find one with in excess of 20 years experience that was willing to work with us as well as another community to fill that position. During the budget process, in discussion with the rec director, he felt that perhaps this wasn't a time where we would need to go back and request a full-time position again, even though he didn't exclude that from the future. He did feel that because of his responsibilities and now lack of staff, because we had a resignation with the league coordinator, that it would be something that he would certainly be willing to continue with us, but again he was looking for a more substantial rate, seeing that there would be no benefits extended, there would be no full-time salary to support. So that was the proposal that was brought forward.
Thank you, Walter. Other questions, comments? Okay, I'm not seeing anything further on recreation, so it appears that we are supportive of, I'm trying to come up with a word for this, $75,523 for the recreation department. Yes, sir.
Thank you. I may not be in attendance on Monday night as the selectman's rep to the rec commission, and I'm not sure the recreation director is going to be here either on Monday. Do we want to address the warrant article coming out of recreation while I am here?
Thank you very much. Forgot all about that. That's the recreation complex improvements. Is that
Correct.
the one you're referring
Yep.
to? Take it away.
So the Recreation Commission's thinking, and the Select Board agreed, that on the back of a very successful project with the community playground build up at the recreation facility, that it would be a great moment to continue that process into a second phase with the continued development of a sports field. So what we're looking to do is take money out of the unexpended fund balance to the tune of, did we put it at 27,000 on an unexpended fund balance to do some blasting, some leveling of the athletic fields at that upper sports complex. We were hoping to have better paperwork for you today from both the blasting company as well as Hodgson, who was going to do some of the surfacing, but it's just been tough to track down. What we do have is a sort of verbal understanding of and rough numbers that Mr. Brown might be able to speak to better, but we're looking at the majority of that 27 going towards blasting and hauling of what needs to happen up there. The remaining bedrock is substantial, and then that entire sports field area needs to come down roughly another 2 feet. So it's a substantial amount of earth that needs to get blown up and moved around. Anything that were to happen under that 27,000 for the blasting and hauling would go towards, loaming, seeding, and surfacing of that field. And if you'd like to hear from Chris, he's got that information better than I do.
How does everybody feel? Do you want some more information, or, okay, Chris?
Hi, Chris Brown, Public Works Foreman. So I've been in contact with a couple different blasting companies. Main Drilling and Blasting out of Auburn is the only one that's actually returned my call and actually done a site survey. They did 2 proposals to the town. I'll have an email on Monday to confirm the amounts of $16,000 and $24,000. It's all depending on what the town and the recreation department want to take as far as responsibility. So the 2 different variations is basically open blasting with no mats versus covered with mats. So pretty big gamble up there, especially considering we just put in a huge, beautiful, absolutely utilized playground up there. So other than that, basically the other thing is like Matt said, bringing the grade down 2 feet, and that gives us success of being able to put under drainage and to bring it back up to the grade of the other athletic field, which is the baseball field.
Thank you. Any further questions?
I have a general question,
Yes,
because my child is too old to utilize these recreational services and has moved out of town, so there you are. So I'm sort of curious, what sort of activities are you currently able to support up there, and why would this be a big step forward?
So I think our vision for that facility would be that it would become the sort of centralized community hub for all sorts of things. It makes perfect sense to me that Bean Old Bash should move up there. We've got the beautiful pavilion that was erected several years ago that's in great shape. So we've got cover there in a further phase, and I would envision this through some process of grant writing or underwriting. We'll get some infrastructure improvements, including water and power, which would allow us to do all sorts of programs. What we don't have in Northwood is that sort of downtown central area. I think a facility like that that's got the ability to do lots of different things can make up for that a little bit in terms of community building. One of the things that we did have to do in our grant proposal for the playground was identify some ways that we were meeting the state's comprehensive outdoor recreation plan. And the SCORP is really a very comprehensive document that talks about all of the state's priorities for new facilities or outdoor recreation facilities. And we were looking at this as an opportunity for intergenerational recreation, grandparents bringing their kids to the playground or up to that field. We've got folks walking the perimeter of that upper field now. We'd love to actually put some work into that and have a nice paved stone dust trail or something in a future iteration of the project. The other beauty that we've got is that it's where the trailhead is for the Guptill trails that have been developed through conservation. So, it's really very much a hub for outdoor recreation in the town at this point. So from the playground, you can actually walk by trail all the way up to Blake's Hill Road if you want at this point. So really, not just sports and recreation, not just youth programs, but we're really looking to service the entire town across spectrums of age and interest level.
Thank you, Matt. Any other questions or discussions regarding the complex improvements warrant articles? Stephen?
Steve Robinson. I guess the question being is with the drilling and blasting, or Rick, you want to do, how much land are you going to take back that's going to be usable? Acre, 2 acres?
So approximately, the soccer field that's going in there, they're estimating about 100 by 200 area. That's going to have to be blasted down below grade. One area in particular is 8 feet, being all the way down to 2 feet. So that's basically the whole back side of the field. We can utilize it for parking as well, and then put an additional, I think it's a soccer field, if I'm correct. So.
What are you doing with the blasted rock?
Hopefully, we're going to beg, borrow, and steal Hodgson come in with his mobile crusher and be able to crush it up for us and utilize it and get rid of it.
Give it to DACA, right?
Any other questions or discussion regarding the recreation complex article? Oh, Paul, sorry.
I'm not quite sure where that field is. I mean, is that where the trunk or treat is? Is that where? So that's a reasonable distance from the elderly housing or childless housing. I'm just curious, rest to the town blasting and cracking someone's foundation and getting sued at the end of it.
Chris? Is that anything you can?
So adjacent to the field, obviously, is the elderly complex. In the past, we actually blasted, I think there was 6 times that they actually blasted in the past, and nothing was affected. The areas that they did blast were actually deeper than we're going now. So.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, I'd like to stop discussion on the proposed operating budget. We can pick that up again Monday night. We do have a couple of housekeeping things that we need to do, such as 2 sets of minutes. So the first set that we have is for October 21st. I'll give everybody a chance to grab them out.
Move to accept the minutes of October 21st.
Okay, we have a motion to accept. Ted, are you seconding? Thank you.
Under the circumstances, I do not think that Dan McNally should be considered a not excused absence. So I would remove that non-excused from Dan's name.
Brian?
The first sentence in the town, the 289,000 was actually from an additional adequacy funds from the state. It wasn't the surplus. Sorry. Line 29, it says with the surplus totaling approximately 289,000. I'm pretty sure that was additional adequacy funding, not surplus funding.
I'm wondering if,
It's just going in.
for sure, what that is. I'm pretty sure is what he said. I wish we knew for sure. 89,000 was. So on line 40 and 39, one is NESPO and one you. No idea what those are. It would be nice if in the future we could write them out. Generally, they'll write it out the first time, and then after that, we would understand. The next line, so let's see, what the school board will do with those recommendations, school board at the meeting. I believe there's an extra school board after recommendations there.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's see,
So we want to
sorry.
remove that.
On line 11, I'm on page 2 now.
Well, why don't we answer the
Okay.
the NESPO is the Northwood Elementary? SPA, okay. I thought that was SAU.
So I really
The
rest my case on that
NESPA
issue
is
then.
The
So
Northwood Elementary,
I got that part.
oh, you got that one, all right.
No, I didn't get I don't know what SPA, do they have a new spa? Okay, school para, thank you. And FCA? SAU.
Yeah, somehow see, this is what happens when we don't speak distinctly and.
Have masks on. Oh,
and have
sorry.
masks on. Yeah, hey, I agree.
All right.
You said you had something on page 2?
On page 2, I'm on line 11. Mr. Winslow stated that he will speak the, I think we need a 2 between speak and the. Speak to the superintendent.
Yeah.
Down at the end of 44 and beginning 45, this coming year, though, the chief feels that they will probably be a little bit more failure. I believe that the chief probably said the chief feels that there will be probably a little bit more failure.
True. So they to there.
I'm on page 3 now. I'm on line 39. When there's a lien put on commercial property, it's registered in the town clerk's, there's a fee for that. So I'm wondering if it's registered in the town clerk's office, comma, there's a fee for that? I mean, it's just a little confusing.
Makes sense. Everybody see where we are?
And thank you, that's all I had.
Okay, are there any other corrections? I would just like to state my agreement, and I don't know that there's anything that we can do about it, but I would like to state my agreement with Betty's suggestion that under the circumstances that Dan be excused. Seems, I can't think of the word that I want, compassionate, I guess. Tim?
I'm just wondering, so she made a suggestion and I made suggestions, and if we all agree on what the suggestions.
Okay. Okay, so everybody will be excused on the 21st. So we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? Okay, to our roll call.
Amend my motion to approve the minutes as corrected.
Okay, we have our second. All right. Tom? Brad? Tim? Mike Moore? Steve? Okay. Betty?
Yes.
Paul? Ted? Pam? Jim? Brian? Bob? I need more space here. Eric? Mike Jobin? And I am a yes, and that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It is 14 yes, 0 no, and 1 abstention. Okay, our last set of minutes are very short and sweet.
Motion to approve the minutes of November 1st.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I do want to clarify, that evening, Dan McNally did call. Between Linda and I, it just got lost in the translation, so Dan is excused on the 1st. And Ted was the individual that wasn't here that night. Correct. So I don't recall who might have made that motion. I'm surprised it wasn't Betty. She's usually the first one on the draw with that, but the other correction that I came up with was in the final motion, made a motion to waive the 10-day requirement. I checked my list and I had 12-1 for a vote, not 11-1. Michael. I know. He needs a microphone.
Thank you. I'm listed as an excused absence, but on the immortal line number 28, it says Mike Moore arrived at 7:25.
You could be excused until you arrive. Yeah, I had a meeting that night, so I
Right.
was late, but I did. I was present.
So we can take you off of excused with just the notation that you arrived at 7:25? Will that work?
That's in the minutes. I would say that.
Okay. Okay. Anything else?
Wish to correct the motion or amend the motion to the minutes as corrected.
Okay. Do we have any further discussion? Okay. Tom? Yes. Brad? Tim? Yes. Mike Moore? Yes. Steve? Betty?
Yes.
Paul? Ted? Pam?
Yes.
I just realized we gotta. Linda, we can go back and check the video to determine who made the motion to adjourn, since it couldn't have been Ted because Ted wasn't there? And we can add that after? Is that acceptable with everybody? Okay. Before I forget it, that's all. Jim?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Bob? Eric? Mike Drobin? And I am a yes. And that count is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 12 yes, 0 no, 2 abstentions. No. I had 3 abstentions, so I screwed up here. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll get the count after. I've got everybody here, but obviously I'm not counting correctly, so. They have been approved. Okay. Next thing on, we've got to hand out the 3 districts' paperwork. Remember, we had agreed that they could bring it to us today. So we'll get those passed around. We will be reviewing those. We'll be reviewing those after we get done with the school next Saturday. Oh, no, because we got school personnel here too. Can you hold that for me? Thank you. Before I trip.
I want to lick my fingers so bad. I don't think that's close enough.
No, probably not. Thank you.
Linda, I gave you yours, correct? I mean, Betty, I gave you? Yeah. Okay. Okay, so we have all of our 3 districts. We will be meeting Monday night at Town Hall, 7 o'clock at Town Hall. Because we don't have this room for every meeting. We will be back here next Saturday. But Monday night, we will be up at Town Hall, and we'll have to see if we need the following, what date, Wednesday, if needed. Hopefully we can get through everything. So please review these. Remember, we're done by 10 o'clock. That's what we did in our procedures. We agreed that we would stop at 10 o'clock on weeknights. I think we've got everything done that we needed to do today. Does anyone have any, Linda, what did I forget? Yeah, those dates are... Well, we may have a fix for that. My personal thoughts are to have those 2 night meetings up at Town Hall. We can get another table in so that we can be spread out far more, like we used to be, with some distance between us, with another table versus kind of scrunched up. We'll have enough mics. We won't have to keep asking Tom to be our runner. Careful what you volunteer for, Tom. What are your thoughts? Yes, Linda. So there is that as well. As I said, we can get another table, which Tim has graciously offered to help us obtain. What say you? Yay, nay? Any thoughts? I'm sorry? Does anyone disagree with town building? So be it. Linda will let the school know that those public hearings will be up at Town Hall again. I'm sorry? Will be at Town Hall. Correct. Yes, sir. No, recess. We need a motion to recess. We're not done. This time Ted did make the motion.
And I'll second
And
his
you will
amended
second
motion.
his amended motion. Okay. Okay, we have a motion and second to recess until Monday evening at 7 o'clock at Town Hall. Yes, I do need to do a roll call for this, folks. Tom? Yes. Brad? Yes. Tim? Yes. Mike? Yes. Steve? Yes. Betty?
Yes.
Paul? Ted? Yes. Pam? Yes. Jim?
Yes.
Brian? Yes. Bob? Yes. Eric? Yes. Mike Jobin? Yes. And yes, we are unanimous that we are leaving. I've been reminded to let everybody know, be sure you take everything with you because those doors automatically lock at 4 o'clock and we cannot get back in.
Where do these go?